the Oscar for every award on the planet goes to Oppenheimer. So excited to finally talk about Oppenheimer. I was really looking forward to this movie. I was not a fan of Tenet or Dunkirk, but I love Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, and I'm always excited to see what he does next. And when I saw the trailer for this with Cillian Murphy playing Oppenheimer and the way the whole film looked, the cinematography, the whole tone, I was like, count me in. And I have to say, I was not disappointed. Just ravished every moment of this movie in the theater. Everyone's already talked about it, the whole IMAX 70 millimeter black and white. Christopher Nolan came up with all of these. This is the first time this has ever been done on film. I absolutely love that. I love that he is so innovative technically with his films. I love that Christopher Nolan never feels stuck with limitations when it comes to filmmaking. He just wants to invent something to make what his vision is happen. And I love that he did that here. And I have to say, after 6 collaborations with Christopher Nolan, I'm so thrilled to see Cillian Murphy at the forefront of one of his films. He is constantly doing great work. It was really nice to see him be the leading role for once in a film of this caliber. You want to talk about great performances and a masterclass in acting? Watch this movie, absolutely. Robert Downey Jr., wow. It is so nice to see him in a role like this. You know, he was fantastic as Iron Man, right? But, I mean, I loved seeing, Robert Downey Jr. before the Iron Man films, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and one of my favorites, his portrayal of Charlie Chaplin. I just rewatched Tropic Thunder recently, and he was outstanding in that film as well. There's a bulldozer at the end of the film, and the powerhouse that was such a nice contrast with Cillian Murphy's subdued, passive performance. It really complemented that nicely. And I did not see a lot of what was happening in the third act coming. So, that was really quite fantastic. When talking about Matt Damon, I feel like a lot of people tend to forget that he's actually a good actor. I love him in The Talented Mr. Ripley. That's one of my favorite films. Such a suspense-filled movie. And there's so much tension within that film. And Matt Damon has so much to do with that. And I was just really happy to see him in this role here. It was a very different type of role for him. And really solid job. If we're going to talk about the ladies of the movie, we have 2. We have Florence Pugh as Oppenheimer's ex and mistress, I would say she is. And then you have Emily Blunt playing his wife. And I want to start off with Florence Pugh because I feel like if I had to critique the film in any way, I would have liked a little bit more backstory with Florence Pugh's character. We all know she's a fantastic actress, but as far as her character goes, it felt a little bit shallow, and I know that there was a moment that I should have felt a little bit more moved by, and I didn't, and I think that's just because the audience didn't get a chance to really know her or fall in love with her at that point. And so that was kind of a little bit of an afterthought, in my opinion. To be completely honest, one of my biggest criticisms of Christopher Nolan's films has always been that his female characters have always felt very shallow and underdeveloped. So the Florence Pugh character there didn't really, that wasn't really a surprise. But what was a surprise was that Emily Blunt's character was incredibly developed and very complicated and very complex and really written with a lot of care. And I have to say, Emily Blunt gave, my goodness, should I just bring this out again? Because if she is not winning this year, Best Actress, or, I'm sure she'll be nominated. It would be insane if she wasn't nominated. This role for her was absolutely a game changer. We all know she's a great actress, but this really put her on a different level in an upper echelon of great actresses in cinematic history. She obviously was, her husband's support system. She's an incredibly intelligent woman. She found him fascinating, and I loved their dynamic together. But she also pushed him. She did not take any nonsense. She didn't like when he was being taken advantage of. She didn't like when people were spreading lies about him, as well as being a functional alcoholic, which was definitely really subtly well shown throughout the movie. Great directing on Nolan's part. And also dealing with postpartum depression, which was definitely a focal point at a moment in the film after their baby is born. And she's pretty much just drunk and the baby's crying. And she's like, I just went to the baby and I don't really want to deal with this. You could just tell she didn't have that maternal instinct. I think she wound up getting there later on when she had the second baby. And that can happen a lot. And that was not talked about really at all in that era. So that was very interesting to see. You know, both of them were very science forward and, you know, maybe not the most warm people on the planet. She clearly went through some severe serotonin withdrawal after the pregnancy, and that was shown in a really great way. My only other critique, and I feel like maybe it would change on a second viewing, I felt that this second act had some pacing issues. I feel like the first act, like gung-ho, all in. Second act, a little draggy, a little snoozy at certain points. It's not that I wasn't interested, but I felt we could have gotten from point A to point B a lot more efficiently. Because then in the third act, it is just, again, gung-ho, just like it was in the first act. Maybe that's just, you know, an opinion that was my experience in the theater that, again, could change absolutely on a second viewing. I'd love to know your thoughts if you felt the second act was a little bit off with the pacing. But besides that, for a 3-hour film, it pretty much flew by for me. So I was born in New York, but I grew up in the Princeton area before I decided to move back. And I have to say, I knew instantly that they were on location in Princeton and it wasn't being filmed somewhere else. There's just something about it that the way the trees are spaced out and the whole atmosphere. Princeton has a very specific look, even if it looks generic. It's really hard to describe. But I love the fact that they actually did choose to film on location in Princeton to show where Einstein was living and how that they were both at, you know, working at Princeton University. I do think that even though Hans Zimmer did not do the score for this one, the music really was a wonderful asset to this movie, and it does mesh with it quite perfectly. And that didn't skip a beat, in my opinion, as far as not using Hans Zimmer again. The music really was a special part of this film, just as much as you would hope for with a Nolan film, since that is such an integral part of his filmmaking. I think that a biography of this caliber was a really smart choice for Nolan to do as his next film. You know, Tenet was incredibly out there, and most of the time we couldn't hear what was going on with that dialogue because the sound mixing was so bad. I didn't necessarily have that issue here. Some of it felt a little muted, but for the most part, I was able to hear everyone pretty clearly. But I really feel like that, you know, a biopic in a lot of ways is the best way to showcase yourself as a director, how you can showcase someone's life in an interesting way, in an artistic way, and in a well-written way, you know, from beginning to end, or a specific event. And I think that Nolan really did this so just effortlessly here. And I think it was kind of showing Hollywood, like, yeah, I have these like time bending space backwards ideas that I love to do all the time in all my films, but you give me a point A to point B type of film, and this is what I'm going to give you. And it did still feel like Nolan. It did have those glimpses of messing with time with the editing and the black and white showcasing Robert Downey Jr.'s point of view as opposed to Cillian Murphy's point of view. I loved all of that. So that was Oppenheimer. I covered Barbie in another review last week, if you're interested in seeing that. Barbenheimer signing off, and maybe we should all make Napola Wish happen. I kind of want to do that. I kind of want to do a double feature of Napoleon and Wish, and I think that would actually pair quite nicely together. So what are your thoughts on that? Let's do a hashtag Napola Wish. I'm all in. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time.